Question number 5, Bill Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister responsible for Housing New Zealand Corporation. How many houses, if any, will Housing New Zealand complete building in the next 2 years?
The Honourable Bill English.
Housing New Zealand advises it will have built 801 houses this financial year, just ended, and 1,279 houses in 2017-18. This includes redevelopment of existing Housing New Zealand properties.
Oh, so they're not new ones.
In addition, well, our redevelopment is new houses. That is a total of 2,080 dwellings over 2 years. In addition, Housing New Zealand advises it will buy and lease or re-sign a further 720 dwellings over that 2-year period. And the member should also understand that other agencies will be producing houses for the market and for social housing. Tamaki Regeneration Company, Hobsonville Land Company, the Crown Land Program and CHIPS, that is community housing providers who are contracted to MSD. So the houses Housing New Zealand builds are some, but not all, of the new housing supply for social housing.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
How many families are living in the under-construction houses that he's been counting as meeting his goal of, and I quote, building 2,000 new homes by December 2015 and 1,500 per year thereafter, unquote, given that the actual number completed is around half that?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, the figures the member is pointing to shows the benefit of the special housing areas which are now allowing Housing New Zealand to build up the pipeline. Because Housing New Zealand has to deal with the same constraints as everyone else, with the additional complexity that it must negotiate with each tenant to relocate them before it can do any redevelopment of its brownfield sites. So it's pretty clear they didn't meet the target set at the beginning of 2013. They're now gearing up. They have geared up considerably to build, as we said, 2,000 houses over the next year or two, and other government agencies will also be contributing to what's going to become a large volume of new housing off Crown land.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
How does he expect the public to have any confidence at all in his building targets when he keeps counting bare land with earthworks underway as a built house?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member is simply wrong, but the member does need to understand that when he and his colleagues run little campaigns in their own suburb with the communities to make sure all the questions are answered, that's fair enough. But it does add time to the pipeline of building Housing New Zealand houses.
Order. 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 Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Who does he blame the most for the government's failure to meet its own modest target for building state houses? The Council, Housing New Zealand, State House tenants, local campaigns, or his own lack of political will, given that he said 2 years ago, if we want less stock, there's not much point in building state houses?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member, I think, does have an understanding of the constraints, particularly on larger scale redevelopment. All of those factors the member has mentioned means that it takes a number of years to build up the pipeline, and the member can be reassured the pipeline is building up, contributed to by Housing New Zealand, the Crown Land Program, Hobsonville Land Company and Tamaki Redevelopment. And the member's welcome to go and look at each of those to see just how the progress is coming along on completed houses.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Does he find it any wonder that there are so many families and children living in cars and on the streets when the amount of state housing declines every year under his watch?
That's right. The Honourable
Mr. Speaker,
Bill English.
the member is incorrect about that. The number of state houses and social houses in Auckland is growing quite rapidly. And I look forward to the member supporting the government's effort to make sure that the Auckland Unitary Plan, which is going to be delivered in a month or so, will enable sufficient supply of houses. Because 20 years of misdirected planning in Auckland has had the biggest impact on low and middle income households who find themselves excluded from a market where the council spent 20 years trying to stop the city growing, and we are working with them to change that. All your mates, Phil.
Order. 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 Question. Order. Question number 6.